am unfortunately coming to you with some absolutely tragic breaking news. I'm sure you've heard by now, but there were 2 shootings in Minnesota targeted at Democratic lawmakers, state representative, and a state senator. And I'll give you the initial breakdown and then the latest update that we have, what information we have about this shooter's manifesto that the police came across, an understanding of the motive emerging, as you can imagine, some statements from law enforcement, Governor Tim Walz, etc. But again, let me lay this out first from the beginning in case you missed some of these details. So you have Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot dead at their house by this shooter. And what happened is then pretty close, you have Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman, and he and his wife were targeted. And when police responded to that shooting, they proactively went over to Hortman's house to see if something had happened there as well, and found that indeed she and her husband had been fatally shot. Unbelievably, mind-bendingly heartbreaking and tragic and difficult, honestly, to comprehend. And so John Hoffman and his wife luckily seemed to be recovering and got out of surgery. And what happened was this shooter was dressed like a police officer, had a car that was all souped up to seem like it was a police car with the lights and everything. And so you can only imagine, actually, I don't think that we can, but the trust that Melissa and her husband would have when a police officer comes up to their door. And that same person went to John Hoffman, his house as well. And police officers got into a confrontation with the shooter. The shooter ran off. This was at the Hortman home and now is on the run. And there's a massive search going on in Minnesota. The No Kings protests there have been canceled because of this. People are sheltering in place and being told, so if you're in Minnesota, only respond if a police officer comes. If it's 2, they're going to travel with more than just 1 police officer because this person is identifying himself that way. Here is Governor Tim Walz talking about this, giving some information, and then talking about how this was his friend.
We're here today because an unspeakable tragedy has unfolded in Minnesota. My good friend and colleague, Speaker Melissa and her husband Mark, were shot and killed early this morning in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination. Our state lost a great leader, and I lost a dearest of friends. Speaker Hortman was someone who served the people of Minnesota with grace, compassion, humor, and a sense of service. She was a formidable public servant, a fixture and a giant in Minnesota. She woke up every day determined to make this state a better place. She is irreplaceable, and we've been missed by so many. Minnesota's thoughts and prayers are with her family, her loved ones, her children, and her parents. My prayers also go out to State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, who were each shot multiple times. The Hoffmans are out of surgery at this time and receiving care, and we are cautiously optimistic they will survive this assassination attempt.
And every cell in our bodies hoping for that to lead to a full recovery. So now we jump to law enforcement officials and what they were sharing, and then we'll get to the latest breaking news on the information about the shooter, who again, as of when I'm recording this, is currently on the run. He ran away from police in that confrontation that I told you about. And so his car that was made to look like a police vehicle was left. And that's where the items, he had signs, he had a manifesto. That's where they obtained the information we'll go through. But first, here is Police Chief.
I can. Good morning, Police Chief Mark Bruley, Brooklyn Park Police Department. The question is, how did we get to Representative Hortman's house, and it was proactively or not? The circumstances that unfolded in Brooklyn Park this morning is that we assisted the Champlin Police Department on a shooting. That shooting was made aware by one of our sergeants that it was at Senator Hoffman's home. In hearing that very intuitive sergeant asked our officers to go check on Melissa Hortman's home, the representative that lives in our community, just proactively as due diligence to swing by. That police officer and his partner pulled down the street when they arrived at Melissa's house. They noticed that there was a police vehicle in the driveway with the lights, emergency lights on, and what appeared to be a police officer at the door coming out of the house. When our officers confronted him, the individual immediately fired upon the officers, who exchanged gunfire, and the suspect retreated back into the home.
Was this an actual police officer or impersonating a police officer?
Yes, the question is, was it a real person or a person impersonating a police officer? It was not a real police officer. This is somebody that clearly had been impersonating a police officer, again, using the trust of this badge and this uniform to manipulate their way into the home.
So, Chief Early, Janice Little, Pair 11, the person not only was wearing a badge posing as a police officer when they approached their victims, they had a car with lights and sirens?
Yes, the question is what kind of vehicle, how were they dressed? They did drive a vehicle that looked exactly like an SUV squad car. It was equipped with lights, emergency lights that looked exactly like a police vehicle. And yes, they were wearing a vest with taser, other equipment that would, a badge very similar to mine, that no question, if they were in this room, you would assume that they are a police officer.
I mean, this is the worst case scenario in terms of the fear that it'll have a ripple effect of somebody who should be the appearance of somebody coming up to your home that should be the last person you'd be afraid of. And how he had all that stuff is an open question. A lot to understand about this individual. And they are clearly saying, and you'll see why, this is a politically motivated assassination and an attempted assassination with the state senator. A little bit more.
How much do you know about if the person that was impersonating an officer who allegedly shot these people, did they knock on the door and people came to the door, or the person break into the home?
Yeah, it was knocking on the door and asking the person to come out, absolutely impersonating a police officer.
Do you all have the suspect's car?
We do have the suspect's car. Suspect is on foot. That is what the large-scale search is currently going on. I just remind residents of Brooklyn Park, I know it's been a long time, but those that are in the grid that we gave the alert out to continue to shelter in place. We're also reminding them that if somebody comes to the door and they knock on the door and claiming to be a police officer, please do a couple things. One, call 911 and confirm that the officer belongs there. If they are a police officer, dispatch will be able to confirm that that person is a police officer. Also, we've informed all our officers in Brooklyn Park that they are not to approach anybody by themselves. They're to approach in pairs, meaning 2 officers. So if there's only 1 officer outside the door, do not answer the door and call 911. If it's a Brooklyn Park police officer or any of our partners that are assisting, they will come in pairs of 2 or more.
This is where we are. 2 Democrats being targeted. And the demented part of this, too, is that one, there's super narrow margins in both the Minnesota State House and Senate. And so this could have been something so premeditated and so intentional that it was seeking to eliminate the majorities in both chambers in the Minnesota legislature. And it wasn't just these 2 individuals and their spouses' names on the list. Police found a hit list in suspect's car with nearly 70 different targets, including abortion providers. Law enforcement found a hit list in the Minnesota suspect's car that contained nearly 70 names. A law enforcement official briefed on the matter told CNN. The names included abortion providers, pro-abortion rights advocates, and lawmakers in Minnesota and other states. Law enforcement also found a Father's Day card addressed to the suspect in a bag full of ammunition. A second official briefed on the case echoed the targeting of abortion providers to CNN's Holmes Library. And so the political motivation, as with everything, I try to be very hesitant before we have a full picture and this person hasn't been captured yet, which is a whole nother terrifying part of this. Someone who literally has a hit, so you know he wants to go after other people and is on the run. And will that be attempted? Another chilling part is that throughout the country, there are anti-Trump, quote unquote, no kings protests going on where people are peacefully protesting to voice their correct concern with the state of the country under Trump. And in this individual's car, you can see the photo here, there were no Kings signs. And so bizarrely, I saw MAGA accounts going, see, it was an anti-Trumper who did this. Now, again, we don't know anything for sure, but I just read you a description that makes pretty clear it's probably not a liberal. But regardless, the tragedy stays the same. We'll wait to get a full assessment once the person's captured and a full investigation is done. But you could imagine that this would be someone who was impersonating a police officer to shoot these lawmakers. It could be somebody who was planning to impersonate a protester to harm protesters or lawmakers at these protests going on. Again, that's just me speculating based off of the limited information that we have. But truly disturbing stuff. The Minnesota State Patrol posted a photo of no Kings flyers found inside the car of the suspect. State Patroller early Saturday said there were some flyers that said no Kings within the suspect's vehicle. Officials are asking the public to not attend demonstrations planned throughout the state today out of an abundance of caution. Understanding that that could have been, again, the second phase of impersonation, or it's something else. But regardless, an extremely dangerous situation ongoing. Governor Tim Walz said, as this news was breaking, I've activated the State Emergency Operations Center. We're monitoring the situation closely and we'll share more information soon. And what's, if indeed a part of the plan here, if the law enforcement officers hadn't had that confrontation with the shooter, if indeed it was to show up at a protest and continue the carnage, it's tragic that because he wasn't captured in Minnesota, that objective, if we don't know, if that was a part of the plan. But regardless, just this violence has already correctly caused law enforcement to say, all right, we need to have everyone stay safe, number one priority. But the fear that this person likely wanted to strike into the hearts of folks is working, and these protests have been canceled in Minnesota.
Jacob Thomas, who's the organizer.
Let me just get this refreshed so I can actually play it.
Jacob Thomas, who's the organizer of one of the rallies in Minnesota. Two of them we knew were canceled, Anoka and Northeast Minneapolis. We now have a post from the Minnesota State Police that says, given the targeted shootings of state lawmakers overnight, we are asking the public to not attend today's planned demonstrations across Minnesota out of an abundance of caution. Now, we had heard in the press conference about an hour and a half ago that police had said they've got the security to be able to handle this situation, and that the protests can go along as planned. Rob D'Amico is with me. Andrew Blankstein is with me. Rob, this is a new development. Tell me what you make of this, because they had said we're good with this.
I think they probably now are figuring he may not be in the box that they thought he was in. We talked about it just a few minutes ago. If he got in a vehicle very quickly after getting out of the back,
because he had a gun and he is in a police uniform.
Yeah. So and the cops were from the front. They engaged in a shooting. He got out the back. If he could have got a vehicle at that point and got out of that smaller perimeter where they thought they had him, they now may be saying, wait a second, we've really searched this. We're not finding him in this small perimeter. He may have got out of it before we had a chance. So that then spreads out where he could be. And now they're starting to say, wait a second, we have these protests going on. Lots of people, could be problems. We're going to start asking people not to go to some of them.
So Jacob Thomas.
So a ton of open questions, but the absolute worst of humanity. And I do want to read Trump's statement, Caroline Levitt posting it. I've been briefed on the terrible shooting that took place in Minnesota, which appears to be a targeted attack against state lawmakers. Our Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI are investigating the situation, and they will be prosecuting anyone involved to the fullest extent of the law. Such horrific violence will not be tolerated in the United States of America. God bless the great people of Minnesota, a truly great place. As you heard there, the really frightening part of this is not just, obviously, primarily, the fact that somebody wanted to do this and was able to. And also that then he got away. And they thought they had him kind of stuck and he got away. And you heard reference there by the commentator, there could have been another vehicle. So how effectively planned was this? And the more that you imagine there was a coherent plan to it, the more dangerous future events could be. So again, I don't even know how to properly express the heartbreak and our feelings for Melissa Hortman and her husband's family. And then we have everything, or only hope, for John Hoffman and his wife, and hopefully they make a quick and full recovery. That's the state of things. Obviously, I'll give you updates as we get more information.